James's father helped build the coop's safe water basin. Then, in the hallway, Diep heard him whisper, "Tell our son, limit meetings with Ms. Diep." He booked a 3-day business trip, and the house went cold again. One quiet order could split a family and threaten Hill Fruit's hard-won boundaries. But James's mother stayed steady. She pressed Noah's stuffed orange into Diep's hand and said, "Don't ignore it." Have you ever smiled through a comment that stung? Like and subscribe so stories of family strength find you. Some families don't fracture in loud fights. They fracture in the quiet seconds when everyone pretends a sentence didn't matter. The car was gone, but Diep still stood in the doorway. Nye hovered beside her, clutching the stuffed orange, watching the road like it might bring the answer back. The orange was warm in Diep's palm. "Bathroom, sweetheart," she said. "Then you picked the bedtime story?" James's mother filled the kettle and set a towel by Diep's hands. "Dry off," she said. "Cold makes thoughts louder." Diep rubbed her hands. "He said it like an order," she admitted. "Limit meetings with Ms. Diep, like my name is a liability." James's mother pulled out a chair. "Sit," she said. "Not to panic, to think." So Diep sat. "I've kept everything clean," she said. "The shop logs, the coop, the boundaries. I don't want James paying for me." "My husband doesn't fear mess," his mother replied. "He fears losing control." She slid Diep tea and offered a small payoff. "I will tell our son tonight." Nee returned with damp hands and climbed onto Diep's lap. The stuffed orange pressed into Diep's ribs, heavy with comfort. Then Diep's phone buzzed on the counter. Hill Fruits, a supplier confirming delivery windows. The screen lit up bright, demanding leadership while her stomach still felt hollow. Work didn't pause, so Diep answered on speaker. "Confirm the time," she said, voice level. "Send the window in writing. If anything shifts, notify me." Her hand trembled once, but she kept it steady. When she ended the call, James's mother watched her. "You didn't sound afraid." "I was," Diep said. "I just don't let it drive." "That's how we treat his words too," James's mother replied. "We don't let them drive." She reached to the hallway table and pulled the guest notebook James had started. Names, dates, deliveries, small records that turned worry into something measurable. She wrote, "Tonight, limit meetings with Ms. Diep, husband departing 3 days." Then she underlined it hard. The notebook sat there like a witness. Diep's cheeks warmed. "You're documenting him." "I'm documenting reality," James's mother corrected. "If he wants boundaries, we'll have them, but we decide what they mean." They stepped outside for air. The yard was darker now, and the coop light glowed faintly through the cold. Nye marched between them, stuffed orange tucked under her arm like a badge. Diep knelt beside the stone water basin they built that morning. The back edge was still higher, the stones still wedged tight. She touched the rim, cold and solid, and whispered, "Safe." Nye echoed her instantly. "Safe," she said, and pressed the orange to Diep's shoulder like a stamp. "My husband noticed the higher edge," James's mother said quietly. That means he was paying attention. She paused. He helps when he wants to. He withholds when he's afraid. Afraid of what? Diep asked. Of being wrong? James's mother answered. Now, if he admits you're good for James, he has to admit he misjudged you. The truth stung because it was believable. They carried that sting inside. Diep guided Nee through brushing teeth, then tucked her into bed with the stuffed orange placed where her eyes could find it. Bedtime sharpened questions. Grandpa doesn't like Mommy? Nye whispered. Diep chose a shape the child could carry. Grandpa is learning, she said. Sometimes grown-ups learn slow. Nee lifted the orange like an offering. Give him happy. We will try, Diep promised, kissing her forehead. Downstairs, the front door clicked. James was home. Quick steps, controlled, trying not to startle a fragile room. Diep met him before he could set down his keys. Your father came, she said. He helped at the coop, then told your mom to tell you to limit meetings with me. James stopped as if the sentence hit his chest. He looked at his mother. Where is he? Gone, she answered, and held out the guest notebook. 3 days, exact words. The notebook changed the air. James read the line once, then again, jaw tight. He doesn't get to assign value to my wife, he said quietly. Not by leaving instructions like she's managing a shift. Diep's eyes burned. I don't want you fighting him, she said. I want you safe. I want us safe. James softened at us. He took her hand, thumb pressing into her palm like a vow. Then we do this the way you built that basin, he said. Controlled, documented. No holes to fall into. His mother nodded. Start with one thing, she advised. Not 10. So James pulled out his phone and called his father. It rang twice, then dropped to voicemail. James didn't slam it down. He spoke evenly, like a report. Dad, I heard what you said. You don't get to limit anything about my marriage. If you have a concern, you bring it to me directly. We talk when you return. He ended the call and stared at the screen. It didn't argue back, but the line had been drawn. 5 minutes later, another phone buzzed. His mother's, an automated airline alert tied to a shared account. She didn't open it at first. She just looked at James. He didn't tell us where, but the phone did. James took the device gently. The notification showed a departure time in the morning and a calendar block labeled only Audit. James tapped the alert open. A booking code appeared, then a hotel confirmation attachment with a meeting room label. Harbor Suite. His mother's eyes narrowed. He's meeting someone, she said. James screenshot everything and sent it to his work email, then changed the shared password so it couldn't vanish overnight. If this is an audit, he said, we answer with facts. He looked at Diep. Pull every Hill Fruits log, deliveries, texts, photos, nothing hidden, nothing twisted tomorrow. And we keep the notebook on the table. He scheduled a 7 a.m. compliance call, saved screenshots to 3 places, and set the guest notebook beside his keys. Diep felt the cold return, sharp as the morning had been. Audit of what? She whispered. James lifted his eyes to hers, steady and alert. "That's what we find out," he said. "Before anyone turns your name into a problem, they can file away." Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Nye shifting in her sleep. The stuffed orange sat on her table like a tiny lantern, and Diep realized tomorrow would decide what kind of morning their family was allowed to have. The stuffed orange still sat on Nye's bedside table when Diep woke up, and the sight of it eased her chest for 1 second, until she remembered the word James had shown her. Audit. Downstairs, the guest notebook lay open beside James's keys. James was already at the table, laptop up, sleeves rolled, eyes steady. "Before 7, he said, "we gather facts. After 7, we speak." Because of that decision, Diep moved like she was back in the coop, hands sure, mind alert. She pulled Hillfruit's logs from the binder drawer, then delivery screenshots from her phone, then the supplier confirmations in writing. Dates first, proof second, feelings last. James's mother joined them with a pen. "No guessing," she said. "We answer what's asked, and we don't offer extra." She tapped the notebook line she'd written. "Limit meetings. 3 days. Audit." At 6:58 a.m., the compliance line lit up. James hit speaker. A polite voice came through. "Good morning. I'm the quality auditor on your partner file. We received a note about unstructured meetings and non-standard documentation. I'm calling to confirm your controls." Diep felt the sting land. Non-standard, like she was careless. She tightened her grip on the binder and kept her face calm. James answered evenly. "We keep dated logs, delivery confirmations in writing, and access-controlled files. I'll send an index while we're on this call." "Please," the auditor said. "And one more item. There's a suggestion for a short home segment. Authentic moments." James's mother's pen stopped. Diep's throat tightened. Upstairs, Nye slept with her stuffed orange guarding her dreams. James didn't raise his voice. No home, no children, pack house and facility only. A pause, like someone testing the door. Then the auditor replied, "Understood. Send the index and your access policy. If it matches, we close the note." When the call ended, Diep exhaled and touched the guest notebook. That wording," she said, quiet. "It came from him." James looked at the hotel attachment again. Harbor Suite. "Then we go where the wording was born," he said. They didn't rush. They built a plan the way they built the stone basin. Controlled steps. A higher edge. No place to slip. James printed the index, saved screenshots in 3 places, and texted Officer Thu. "Need a neutral witness for a compliance meeting." Officer Thu replied, "I can be there." By mid-morning, they were at the Harbor Suite. Officer Thu met them in the lobby, neat ponytail, focused eyes. "I'm observing," she said. "Not escalating." Upstairs, outside the meeting room, James's father stood alone with his travel bag at his feet. In the bright hotel light, he looked tired in a way he never allowed at home. James stopped a few steps away. "Dad, you told Mom to tell me to limit meetings with my wife. Then you scheduled an audit without us." His father's eyes flicked to the binder. "I scheduled it so you wouldn't have to," he said. Protection, spoken like control. Diep kept her voice soft. "If you were protecting us," she asked, "why did it sound like I was the risk?" His father's jaw worked once. "Because partners push," he said. "They push until they find a weak place, and they were circling your home." The door opened. A content liaison stepped out with a content badge and a camera bag, smile too warm. Behind her, the auditor held a clipboard. "There you are," the liaison said. "We can finally capture the heart of Hill Fruits, family cells." James stayed in the doorway. "We're here for compliance," he said, "not to market my child." The auditor nodded toward the clipboard. "We have a concern note, documentation language, access control, and a proposal for home footage." Diep opened the binder. "Here's the index," she said, sliding the pages forward. "Dated logs, delivery confirmations, access policy, and our home is not content." The liaison tried again. "Audiences love authenticity." James's mother stepped closer. "Authenticity is not consent," she said. "No minors, no home." The room went still, waiting to see who would bend. James's father looked at the liaison, then at the auditor. "Facility only," he said. "That's the agreement. That's the boundary." James turned to him. "Then say it clearly," he said. "Not through my mother, not through whispers." His father swallowed. "I was wrong in how I spoke," he admitted. "Miss Diep is not the risk. The pressure is." The auditor flipped through the index, then the access policy. "This is sufficient," he said. "We'll close the concern note as unsubstantiated. Home footage is not required under your current terms." The liaison's smile tightened. "We can revisit." "No," James said, calm as a locked gate. "We deliver fruit. We don't deliver our family." A one-page clarification was drafted and signed before anyone could reshape the story. Packhouse footage only. No home, no minors. Single contact channel. Documented delivery windows. The auditor stamped it and slid the page across the table. Diep felt her shoulders drop. Justice didn't always look like courtrooms. Sometimes it looked like one clean page that kept a child's bed private. In the parking lot, James's father lingered beside his bag. "I thought if I handled it alone, I could keep you out of it," he said. James's mother answered without heat. "You kept us in the dark," she said. "That's not protection." His father turned to Diep. "I won't ask my son to limit you," he said. "If I'm afraid, I'll say I'm afraid." Diep nodded once. "That's enough to start," she said, and she meant it. Back home, the afternoon was pale and steady. Diep walked to the coop with Nye and me. The stone basin held clean water. The higher edge still held. Nye crouched, touched the rim, and announced, "Still safe," like it was a verdict. Inside, dinner was simple. Noodles, broth, sliced herbs. James's mother set bowls down like she was resetting a table and a family at the same time. James turned on the porch light before the sun fully fell. Me sighed by the door, finally off duty. Upstairs, Noi placed the stuffed orange beside her pillow and yawned. "A happy job today," she murmured. Diep kissed her forehead. "Yes," she said, "a job that keeps us together." Downstairs, the guest notebook stayed open on the counter, but now the last line read, "Clarification signed, boundaries held." James's father's name wasn't underlined anymore. And for the first time since the car pulled away, the house didn't feel like it was bracing. It felt like it was breathing,